I don't have a personal relationship with President Trump. We don't travel in the same circles. I don't think we have too many values we hold in common.
He used to be a Democrat, so...
Yeah,
Or at least a Democrat donor.
I'm always careful of people who change labels like that.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mariel Garza. I'm your host at the Golden State Report podcast. And today my guest is Austin Beutner, a man with a long resume. Let's see if I can get it right. Among other things, he's a philanthropist, the former superintendent of LA Unified School District, a former deputy mayor of Los Angeles, a former investment banker, and for a time, about a decade ago, the publisher of the Los Angeles Times, which means he was my boss's boss. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. You can fill me in. But he is now looking to add another item on his resume, mayor of Los Angeles. Thanks for joining me today, Austin. You ready to go?
I'm ready to go, Mariel. Thanks for having me.
Okay. When you launched your campaign earlier this month, you talked about the city being adrift. Describe what you mean by that. What are we adrift from?
Yeah, sure. But, put it in some context. I've had the good fortune in different things I've been involved with, whether it's superintendent of schools, visiting with families in communities across Los Angeles, authoring and being part of a coalition to support Proposition 28 to put arts and music back in schools, Vision to Learn, which provides eyeglasses to kids throughout the Los Angeles community, kids who need them and don't have them, and keep in touch with a lot of folks I've met. And the common refrain I hear is a city that's becoming every day less affordable, every day less safe, and a more difficult place to live. And that sense of drift is, boy, this sidewalk's been broken a long time and it's not getting fixed. The challenge of homelessness, ever present, money being spent.
Okay, I got to interrupt you. Mission Impossible?
Oh, come on.
Is that a statement of what you're trying to do?
No, that's Hawaii Five-0. Everyone knows.
Oh, that's Hawaii Five-0. Sorry. Okay.
With the USD marching band, no less. Come on.
I'm embarrassing. Hawaii Five-0. I'm going to have to ask you about why later, but
yeah.
Go ahead. We will cut that out. We'll pick it up from there.
No, you can leave it in if you want. That's my ringtone. My kids give me a hard time when I was doing an awful lot of media during my time as superintendent. Every once in a while, I'd forget to turn my phone off like that. And be like, Dad, I heard you on CNN. I heard your phone, actually. I didn't know it was you, but there we go. So adrift is just that. We don't seem to have a shared vision or leadership with a shared vision as to how do we make it better. And maybe it's a crisis of confidence that it can be. And the people I've met through all my journey, particularly the last 17 years in public life in Los Angeles, we have the most wonderful group of people in Los Angeles. How about we have a city government that lives up to the standards of people who live here?
You have, well, at least so far, made affordability the main message of your campaign. And you noted in a press conference just earlier this week that the city's fees for trash, water, utilities, just about everything has gone up pretty substantially in the last year. You said that also you're going to make sure that every dollar is well spent. And while tracking is, it's good to track the dollars, what are you going to do to cut costs? Are you going to roll back any of the fees that the city has raised?
Under Mayor Bass, the average household, which I think is well below the median, the average household's paying $1,223 a year more. That's about a month's worth of groceries for a family of four. That's sewer, trash, electricity, and power. The point we were making is that's a lot of money. I think that's probably obvious to most people. And what's not being done are wise choices or informed and engaged choices about, can we afford this? Someone asked me yesterday, well, can you roll it back? I said, well, imagine someone took you to a restaurant and they pre-ordered one of everything on the menu. You got the bill. You ate the food. Rolling back is hard. But what's happening under Mayor Bass and what will happen in the next year, in the next 4 years, is a mayor and city council will make decisions about what we can afford. That's the time to engage the public before you commit the monies. Because after that, you're just stuck with the bill. So here we are. The city hasn't had the city council and mayor, who are the rate setters. They're the ones who decide what your electricity bill is, what your power bill is. We're different than the state, which has a public utility commission sort of distant. In DWP, they operate under a premise called, or a theory called, cost recovery. So whatever you commit to buy at that restaurant, you got to pay for when you check out. And we haven't had that. They haven't held a public review of what you're paying on the record, where a city council and mayor and say, I vote for this. We have to buy this. It's going to cost you X. And that's where we got to start, which is what choices are being made on our behalf. And we all at home, when we may have a budget, you have a budget, my family have a budget, we decide we like that, but maybe we can't afford that. So we buy half of that, or we buy something different that's less expensive. That's how you actually avoid rate increases. That's how, over the long term, you reduce costs. But it's not really a conversation about what's already been done. I can't undo what's already been done, but I certainly can lean hard into future choices and hopefully make better choices so people across our city aren't faced with these ever increasing bills.
On that topic, one of the discussions the city council has recently had is the whether or not to expand and modernize the convention center. Ultimately, the council and the mayor decided to commit to a $2.6 billion makeover, which leaves the city on the hook for $100 million a year in bond repayments. Do you think that was a wise choice? Was that a case in which the city should have stepped back, city leaders should have stepped back and say, can we afford this? What kind of burden is it going to put on our residents?
Sure. Let's again roll back to the choices made before this final vote. Okay. The modernization of the convention center was first proposed under Mayor Garcetti as a $500 million project 5 years ago. Okay. Now it's $2.6 billion. Maybe the choice should have been made to do it then for $500 million, not today for $2.6 billion. By the way, if anybody thinks it's 2.6, I got a bridge I can sell you in Brooklyn somewhere. It ain't going to be 2.6. It's going to be more than that. So the choice to delay, is that the original sin? I don't know, because it's going to cost a lot more. The case for what the benefit is to everyone in Los Angeles hasn't been made, at least that I can see or read about. What happens if we expand the convention center, if we modernize it? Does it mean more tourism, more jobs, ultimately? The trade-off of that versus the encroachment on the general fund. The $100 million cost, again, it will be more than 100. I think Katie Orlowski talked about it. We have a general fund, and we just can't spread that peanut butter around anymore. There's not enough. We need to grow. We need to build a tax base, rebuild a tax base, and we'll talk about that, I hope, in our conversation this morning. But that $100 million isn't just money, it's less service. So that broken sidewalk, it's the delayed emergency response in an ambulance, it's the street light that doesn't go on, and when you're therefore walking at home in the dark, or taking your kid to school in the morning in the dark. They're choices. And I didn't see a very informed and fulsome conversation about the choices. And it echoes our earlier discussion about the direct costs of your electricity, your power, your water, and your sewer. To come to the end and say, would you do it or not do it? You go, well, boy, we've had 5 years to have a complete conversation and make an informed choice, allow everyone in Los Angeles to weigh in, instead of a couple of constituents in City Hall and City Council seemingly in a rush. What was the rush? If it was a rush, why not 5 years ago? So I don't think I know enough. I don't think most people in Los Angeles have been presented with enough information to be able to decide, is this the best choice, or were there other things that could have been done with those monies? I can imagine other things that we might do to reimagine downtown, which desperately needs to happen. Again, what are those choices? Because choosing to spend $2.6 billion, or whatever number becomes on this, means we're not spending it on something else. We don't have that dowry. This is borrowed money, which we got to pay back. This isn't money sitting in the bank that came down from the heavens and we have a one-time bounty. This is borrowed money where a choice was made to do this instead of other things. What were those other things?
So the reality is that mayors always get stuck with the decisions of past mayors. And whoever is leading the city in 2028 is going to be left with decisions made by the two preceding, well, the at least one preceding mayor, possibly two. And that's when the city is set to host the Olympic Games. And I remember when you were publisher and I was an editorial writer, we talked a lot about the potential financial pitfalls for the city as the mayor, then Mayor Garcetti, was negotiating the games for the city. Um, so if you are mayor in 2028 or in 2026, um, what do you think your role will be in order to make sure the city isn't on the hook for a huge chunk of money?
Well, first, I'm an optimist, so let's just say when I'm mayor, as opposed to if. But when I'm mayor, I think there are three things we need to make sure happen. The first is whatever the games cost, the LA 2028 team need to raise $1 more, whatever they cost, because costs change. Uh, it's still 2 years away. No one can know with 100% certainty what the costs will be. I'm confident that Casey Wasserman and the team at LA 2028 are going to do that. They have to. The city's not in a position to absorb $1 of losses. So $1 more, that's on LA 2028. Okay. The second thing is a clear understanding of what does the city need to do to support a game. So you could think of it like a TV show. The NBC folks who do a great job, they could narrow the aperture and just show you the basketball court. Okay. That'll be fine. Intuit Dome is a wonderful stadium. Basketball will look great. But the aperture is going to get widened for the game a little bit. People have to transit to the game. You have to have a bike race. Is it going to be like the Tour de France? I'm a big cycling fan. Every year, it's like an infomercial for France and Paris, where they go through the streets of Paris. I hope the road cycling race goes through the streets of Los Angeles and the hills above and so on. Got to make sure those roads are paved. Can't have a bike race with potholed roads and broken sidewalks, right? So there's things the city has to do that are on the city that we have to do well. And then the last piece, games typically fall in two categories. One is it a city you want to come back to or not? And what's the narrative of that city for the future? And I hope we can turn Los Angeles around. We can get back on track so that when the world comes to see us, they have a wonderful experience with sport and people from around the world in the games. But Los Angeles is viewed as a city of the future. I went to a Dodger game a couple weeks ago with my wife. We went to the only playoff loss, so we've stayed away. We're staying home for better luck, we hope. But when we got there, I said to my wife, I said, today's number is 0. And she was thinking a shutout. And that's great. I said, no, it's not good, because that's the number of cranes we saw in the sky on the way to the stadium. I live on the west side, so it's a long drive. You see much of Los Angeles. That's a problem. That's not the only indicator of jobs, but if we're not building, the last big project downtown was the Wilshire Grand that I was involved in helping to greenlight and build. Right now, what would be the landmark downtown? Maybe graffiti towers. So the lasting impact of the Olympic Games, assuming LA 2028 do their job and raise $1 more than what the costs are, which they will, and assuming we have good leadership in City Hall to make sure the roads are paved wherever needs to be done to put on a good games and that they're safe and people can access them and have a great time while they're here. The lasting legacy is going to be Los Angeles, a city of the future or city of the past. And we've got 2 years to get that right and make sure when people come, they see Los Angeles as a city of the future.
Well, repaving streets is not the only thing the city needs to do. It's working on the people mover and the deficiencies at LAX. It's getting public transit in line. It's making sure, well, the convention center is ready for the games it's intended to hold. Is the city right now, from your point of view, on track to meet those demands? and to be ready by the time thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many people start streaming into Los Angeles.
Uh, I can't say that I know, and I don't think many in Los Angeles know. This goes back to the point I was making earlier about transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope, as mayor, myself, city council, others, we'd be holding regular hearings on what is it we got to do? Where are we? And we can hear from the folks at the airport about people movers. We can hear from streets and sanitation about roads being paved and everything in between. Um, I think I have a good sense of what it takes to lead a complex organization like the city. My time as superintendent of schools during a crisis, we found a way to feed everybody, not just children, but children and adults across Los Angeles, no questions asked. We stood up the largest food relief effort in our nation's history because we needed to. We painted outside the lines. There was nothing in the charter of school districts that say in a global pandemic, schools should be the lifeline. We decided that we needed to and we could, and we need that same approach, not just to get ready for the Olympics. We need that same approach to address the issue of affordability that so many people are struggling with, to address the issue of safety, to address the issue of homelessness. And the Olympics would just be just one example where that's the role of leadership, to make sure we have a common vision, that the people who do the work have the tools and the resources they need to get the job done right. And then everybody's held accountable so the job gets done. And that's what we did in schools. We fed people. We got everybody a computer and internet who needed it. And we did many things that just say, wow, who knew schools could do that? Well, it's going to take a city and city leadership to take that kind of approach, paint outside the lines, get everybody working together, moving in the same direction to be ready for games that are successful.
I want to get back a little bit to the question of affordability because I think it is on everyone's mind. Although there's, a lot of it is outside the city's control and has to do with what's going on nationally, internationally. But one thing that is sort of central to the question of affordability is housing. Housing in Los Angeles, there's not enough of it. There's not enough affordable. There's not enough safe housing. And these are for people at almost every income level. There's just not enough of it. Although the burden falls hardest on those low income. So, how much can a mayor do about housing? I mean, for real, other than just talking about the issues and
Oh,
urging.
Mayor, listen, first of all, it's the biggest bill most people pay. So when you talk about affordability, uh, one, two, and three is housing. Number four is maybe the direct services that the city provides. A mayor plays a vital role. The city plays a vital role. In the last 12 months or so, Los Angeles, fewer units of housing have been built than any time in the past decade. That's a problem. You need to look at root cause. You need to look at things like ULA and say, okay, is it working or not? Does it need to be changed? Do we go back to the voters and have a second conversation about that? You need to
Oh,
talk to the providers of
before we
capital.
move on, do you think ULA needs to be changed,
Yes, I do.
revised?
I do. I think
Are you on on par with what Mayor Bass thinks about maybe lowering the burden on multi-unit and shopping centers?
I've not followed every word she said. I think it's kind of simple. I think we have to go back to the voters, by the way. I don't think a backroom deal in Sacramento is the way to address that. The voters spoke. We need to go back to them and explain what's working, what's not. A mansion tax, yes. We need a reliable stream of funding to address the issue of homelessness. Uh, the kind of gross capture of multifamily has crushed that. There are no multifamily units being built. So, what exactly the remedy is, we need to sit down with the people who build multifamily homes. We need to sit down with the coalition who initially brought the subject in front of voters and find that sweet spot to change it. It needs to be changed. But look past ULA, there is no outside capital coming to Los Angeles. None. We've been redlined, and not redlined in the horrific old sense of by race or ethnicity or neighborhood. There's no outside money coming to Los Angeles because of ULA, because it's too hard, because it takes too long to get a permit. Permits are time and money. That means that everything winds up costing more when there are delays. There is no certainty. Most cities have a zoning framework. Los Angeles is intended to have what are called community plans, where the rules of the road exist. So you have a by right, the ability to I can build 6 stories because that's what it says. I don't need to curry favor with the city council person. I don't need to have incessant hearings. I don't need to hire expediters, and I don't have 3 years to permit my land. I can just go build it tomorrow. If you look at the 34 community plans that comprise the communities where they're meant to be plans, the 34 communities that comprise the city of Los Angeles, only 2 have been updated in the past decade. About 20 some odd have not been updated this century. So if we don't have an agreed set of rules as to where more is needed, where more density has to happen, and getting communities to buy into that density, how's it ever going to change? So this current expediter system, which is find someone in City Hall, contribute to their campaign in hopes that they'll give you that special right to do something that the neighbors may or may not want, uh, that's broken. We need to go back to legitimate community input, a clear set of rules. That's going to get us faster housing. It's going to get us the capital back into Los Angeles to build it. Hopefully, an amended ULA so that capital wants to come. But it's an all of the above um, approach to changing that.
SB 79 that passed earlier this year intended to ease some of those problems by giving developers the by right ability to build multi-story units in neighborhoods, even single family neighborhoods that were in a certain proximity to major rail lines or subway lines. Mayor Bass asked the governor to veto it. He didn't. Um, did you do you support SB 79 and its provisions?
Again, I support elements of it. Okay, we need more density. Density near transit makes sense. Transit-oriented development is sort of a cornerstone for thoughtful urban development around the world.
Did it
Um,
go too far or not far enough?
let me expand a little bit on SB 79. It's a poor reflection on our leadership in City Hall when it's being done to us by a bunch of Sacramento people. Okay, the people in Sacramento, a legislator in Northern California is going to decide what the rules of the road are in Los Angeles. That's a symptom of a problem. The problem is lack of doing it ourselves, lack of community plans that are updated, lack of clarity as to what would work or wouldn't work. But it's all too easy for the Sacramento politicians to come in when nothing is happening, and nothing is happening. So I put that squarely at the feet of leadership in City Hall and a mayor who could have and should have been ahead of this. So back to choices. You're left with a choice. Do you support it or not? You go, well, actually, I would have done something different the last 3 years. We would have been updating community plans. We would have been working to convince legislators in Sacramento we got it and we are building more housing. We don't need your help. But I think it's a poor reflection on our own leadership if the best we've got is what someone up in Sacramento can decide works for us. They don't know our communities. They don't know where density should be or shouldn't be. It's clear we need more density. I don't think too many people could debate that. It's clear we need a lot more housing. But here we are. We don't have our own plan. It's going to get done to us by others if we don't have our own plans.
In general terms, where do you think we should build density and what neighborhoods or types of neighborhoods should be off limits?
Again, that's a local conversation. Los Angeles is 400 square miles. One of the charms, one of the magic of Los Angeles is the different characteristics of many neighborhoods. But the notion near transit, it makes sense. We're trying to uh, over time move from a car-driven society to different forms of getting around, whether it's to work, to recreation, to school. That's going to be more public transit, I hope, than ever before. And we've got to support that with housing that is transit adjacent. Now, what's adjacent? Is it a half mile? Is it a quarter mile? Is it a half mile in certain communities and a mile in other communities? There's not one size fits all for Los Angeles. That's the charm and complexity of it. But if we are doing our work right, we're going to engage with communities across Los Angeles to help set those rules. We've SB 79's passed. It's the law of the land.
It takes it out of your hand. I mean, it's a done deal, right?
Right. And so, like I said, I support the concept. We need
Mhm.
more density. I don't like the notion that we did nothing and therefore we had our future handed to us written on a piece of paper by a bunch of Sacramento people.
Um, so building more housing, important. What do you think about some of the efforts and that the uh, city council has explored and enacted during the pandemic of rent freezes, stronger rent control. Do you think we need a statewide rent control?
We have a supply problem. You and I just spent several minutes talking about it. The single best way to reduce everybody's cost of housing is to build more. It's that simple. Once you start going down the slippery slope of saying, well, what's here, we're going to set new rules of the road, you're going to choke off more new. Uh, in certain instances, rent control and other things, but it's a very, to me, a very targeted solution. Broad brush, nobody can pay more. It means you'll have no more. We have a supply problem. That's the problem we need to be addressing. But to put more rules of the road on what we have, I think you're going to wind up that capital that doesn't want to come to Los Angeles will never come to Los Angeles. And that's been proven time and time again around the world. If you got a supply problem, let's address the supply problem.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the wildfires. Karen Bass has been blamed for just about everything. The reservoir being out of operation, water pressure not being high enough in hydrants, deployment decisions of the LA Fire Department, even the pace of rebuilding after the fires. And I know you have some personal experience because your house was damaged in the fire, Palisades fire. And correct me if I'm wrong, your mother-in-law's home was burned down. Um, and so maybe you can talk a little about which of those things truly were the mayor's fault, if they were, and what should she and other city leaders be doing to help people like you, people like your mother-in-law, to rebuild?
Again, a little context, and yes, my mother-in-law, the house my mother-in-law lived in, burned down right across the street from Station 69. The home we are in has toxic levels of lead and lithium in the walls, so we're trying to figure out what to do. But we'll be fine. There are 12 people who lost their lives, and their families aren't going to get that back. There are 5,000 or 6,000 people who lost their homes. Thousands of people lost their livelihoods. This is not a trivial thing that happened. I think it is a failure of leadership. Let's start with first principles. We've learned this week it was preventable. Okay, you start there. What else could have been done to prevent it? Well, part of prevention is being prepared. So the broken reservoirs, the hydrants that were dry, the fire trucks that were in the garage and not able to be deployed. That's what leaders do. They make sure the equipment is ready. That's what a superintendent does. When I visited a school, I made it clear to everyone there, I'm not the head teacher, I'm not the head principal. My job is to get you what you need. So the firefighters didn't have what they needed. That's on leadership. Decisions made during a crisis. The mayor, I think it's a bit of scapegoating, relieved a chief of her duties by saying the decision the chief made not to hold the Monday firefighters over to Tuesday was an egregious mistake. Unanswered in that press release by the mayor is, did the mayor play a part in that decision? If not, she should have. She's the boss. She is the public safety leader in Los Angeles. So you can't throw your team under the bus and say, boy, Mariel, you made a bad decision when you didn't take part in that decision. And every decision made since, to me, we are behind. Everything is playing catch up. Everything about the rebuilding of the Palisades, for instance. I don't see a builders collaborative. I don't see an effort to try to make it easier for all the rebuilding to happen easier, right? You have some public park space that can't be used. You could ask Home Depot or someone to come in and say, can you pre-deploy a bunch of wood and refrigerators and cement and everything else you need to take traffic off the roads to help things smarter, better, faster? Could we put up lights? There are other disaster areas that where you have two shifts. You could help the people doing the work faster. I was talking to someone with us involved in schools. They were told 18 months. It looks like it's going to be 4 years. It's not happening fast enough. But the buck stops with the mayor. It's her team. There were a series of decisions made before that, with the benefit of hindsight, proved to be poor. They didn't pre-deploy crews into the Palisades like their playbook said they should have in a high-risk time. right? And the federal government sets the standard for high risk. Monday was high risk by anybody's standard. And when the fires came on Tuesday, guess what happened? This is not a natural disaster. That's where I think people are perhaps being misinformed or misled. What we learned about the rekindle is the smoke was rising from there 10 o'clock in the morning before there were any winds. And one of my sons was an Eagle Scout. And as Boy Scouts, you're 10 or 12 or whatever, and they're responsible for getting the breakfast fire started after the evening's prior fire. And they put it in safe containers and everything else. We're not talking about fires in the woods. But young boys, maybe young girls too, they're not particularly looking for extra work. So you know what they learned? The first thing they did when they got up in the morning is blow on the embers from the night before. And more often than not, the fire starts again. So you don't have to go scurry around and find more wood and kindling and everything else. The firefighters knew that. That's what we just found out. So I do believe it's a failure of leadership. And this isn't the first crisis we will face in Los Angeles. We've faced them before. We've had civil unrest. We've had floods. We've had fires. We've had earthquakes. We'll face more. And I think we need leadership who can respond to the crisis in a better manner than Mayor Bass has responded to the crisis in the Palisades. And I think we need leadership who will treat the crisis of homelessness, the crisis of affordability, the crisis of safety, the crisis of services that just don't happen in the same manner. We're adrift. We need a different type of leadership to move forward.
You were a supporter of Mayor Bass's when she ran the first time. Are you saying she didn't live up to your expectations?
Yeah. In simple terms, yes.
Was it only about the fire, or were
Oh,
there
no.
other?
To put in context, I'm not running to be the fire warden. I think maybe the fire is a wake-up call for people to say, well, how are we doing across the board? A year ago, the mayor was saying we were making progress on homelessness. And like many, I can't say I studied the data every day. I took her at her word. Just a week ago, RAND released a report that said, not so fast. You might have actually not counted properly. And if RAND is to be believed, which they're professional people, independent researchers, there are actually more people on the street than less. If you look at the billions of dollars being spent to try to address the issue, it's unclear where the money's gone. A federal judge has said billions are unaccounted for. A year ago, I don't know that it got the same scrutiny. Maybe now, after a fire where you say, okay, leadership's been tested and didn't rise to the occasion, maybe it's appropriate for us to look at other things that leadership and city are meant to be addressing and provide that same scrutiny. And when you look at the challenge in homelessness, if it's not getting better and billions are unaccounted for, maybe different leadership's needed there too.
Do you think that, at least conceptually, she's taken the right approach to addressing homelessness, or is there some fundamental change that you'd like to see?
Well, I have a hard time evaluating the case. If Rand tells me there are more people on the street, if firefighters tell us, and this is public data, that their number of calls to help people experiencing homelessness are going up every year under Mayor Bass, and those are just data. Those are not opinions. Those are data. It's hard to say what is actually happening. So I think the first place I would start is let's figure out where the money is going. What impact is it having? And if you and I and everyone else who lives in Los Angeles are having such fundamental questions, we need to start back to the basics. And when a mayor is in court fighting the elected city controller's efforts to audit her signature program, Inside Safe, we've lost the scent. Somehow we've gotten off the reservation. These are public funds. We all have a right to know where the money's going, what's it being spent on. So I think that's the place you got to start. I think we need to think about where we can take people, where they're going to find help. Do we have enough shelter? Are there enough services? I think a careful look would find that we're short shelter and we're short services. So maybe we need to redirect some of the money to shelter and services, less to the promised land at the end, which is permanent supportive housing. So yeah, I think there are probably some strategy changes that need to be made. But the first place to start is let's have a clear open conversation about what we are doing, if it's working or not, where the money's going, and those things that are making a difference, let's do more of. Those things that aren't making a difference, let's stop those right away.
So, uh, what I'm hearing you say, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's a failure. There's a failure to address homelessness, but we're just not clear about what it is yet and what fixes need to be made. Does that
Well,
sum it up?
I can tell you from uh, the outside that it appears we're short services, we're short shelter. Okay. Um, but when a mayor refuses to allow the city controller to tell us what's actually happening, when a federal judge said billions are unaccounted for, it's pretty hard for you and I to have an informed discussion about what we would change. That's my point. So you need the facts. Let's start with the facts. I'm offering directional views as to where I think more services and support are needed, but let's start with the facts.
One thing that's bedeviled Bass and other mayors is that um, residents of Los Angeles are very reluctant to have homeless buildings. And I'm not just talking about shelters, but facilities or apartment buildings specifically designed to get unhoused people into housing because of their fear that it's going to bring an associated sort of drug use and trash and violence and other criminal behavior. Um, how do you overcome that? We've seen that. We've seen that in the West Side. We've seen that in
Oh
many
no, it's
neighborhoods.
listen, it's a well-founded fear. You and I talked earlier about transit-oriented development. If you look at certain transit spots, you'll actually see the housing closer to the transit cheaper than housing away from the transit. And you go, no, why is that? Well, actually, it's because some of the transit corridors are becoming a place for people who don't have a roof over their heads to live. So they're living in the transit corridors, or they're living on a train or a bus. So it's clear that people's perception of that's reality. They
Mhm.
don't feel safe. Um, Part of a plan is to say, where are we going to do it? We have to make safe shelter available to people. That's sine qua non. We can't do it without it. There are public lands. There are other ways to go about it. Um, it does not have to
Give us
be.
an example, and one example of how we might use public lands to house
Well,
folks.
I'd go back. I'd listen to the experts. I think people who are involved in doing the work will tell us. That's what I'd rely on. And then we're going to have sometimes hard conversations with communities. But I can tell you what doesn't work: when the city pays $20 million for a 32 unit hotel with a plan to house homeless, and nobody spends a night there for 3 years. And that's fact. That's not an anecdote. That's fact. That doesn't work. So either the work has to be done beforehand uh, to build support in that community to house people experiencing homelessness there, or don't waste the money.
One of the
But
approaches
we're doing it backward. Yeah.
One of the approaches is not to force people into, and by people I mean unhoused people into housing if they don't want to. And I don't know how much of a factor that has been in making it hard for Inside Safe. Do you think that's a flawed approach?
Well, these are people. Okay. One of the challenges in doing any of this work is a recognition that everybody's on a different journey. Uh, there might be people who were evicted. They actually have stability in their lives, but couldn't make that last rent payment. That's easy. We could provide them with a voucher. We could provide them with housing in some way, shape, or form. There might be people who've been displaced with work. We could help them find employment. There might be people who came from Ohio in search of greener pastures that actually just want to go back to their family in Ohio. We're left with people with severe psychiatric illness or substance abuse or some combination thereof. Uh, and one of the premises is it's a voluntary association is difficult because they may not wish to be housed. I know someone whose mom became unhoused on the curb in front of her own house. So how do you do that? How do you deal with someone who's struggling with that? How do you deal with someone who's struggling with substance if you have rules that sobriety is a prerequisite to be provided housing? Okay, you know, which is first, the chicken or the egg? Well, they're probably not coming in sober. So the ability to be sober, stay sober, or whatever substance issue they're challenging with. So it's complicated. Uh, we've got to find solutions. There are some pilots. You know, one of the things I hope we can do, certainly will do when I'm mayor, is look outside the island of Los Angeles for what good is happening. I was talking with somebody who is involved in this work, and they said, "Well, Austin is complicated. It takes 17 interactions to help get somebody off the street." And I said, "Well, that's interesting. 17, that's not 15, and that's an average. 17, not 15, not 5, not 20. Uh, where does 17 come from?" I said, "Well, we just added up. There are whatever 25 people doing this work. We added up how many interactions they had." I go, "So we are now measuring what we do, which isn't having the impact we'd like, and we've decided that is somehow defined in science. You know, the periodic table of the elements, number 17 now says that's the number of interactions it takes." I think we'll find examples of things being done elsewhere in the country that have to be tried here, because I think it's pretty clear to everybody, certainly the people I speak with, I imagine most of your listeners and viewers, that what we're doing isn't having the impact we hoped it would. So let's go back, let's challenge some of the assumptions like 17 interactions, and maybe there are things we should be doing differently.
So there's no reason to believe that the Trump administration is going to be done with focusing on democratic cities like Los Angeles when it comes to immigration raids and whatnot by 2026. So, and I'm wondering, Democratic mayors in large cities have taken different approaches to dealing with Trump so far and the immigration raids. Some have been taking the fiery bully pulpit, get out of our town approach. Others, I'm thinking specifically of San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie, have taken a more behind the scenes, lobbying for what you need approach. And I'm wondering what your approach will be if you're mayor and President Trump sends more troops to the city.
Um, uh, let's first define kind of one's moral standards. I think grabbing friends, neighbors, colleagues off the street, tearing up families is horrible. I'm not going to countenance that at all. People who are breaking the law, the federal administration can do what they think is the right thing and make sure that people are brought to justice. But for people who are working, been members of our community, have families. I was with somebody. There's someone who's been part of the fire department for 5 years, as a partner. It makes absolutely no sense. We're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that doesn't happen. And there are things that we need to be doing to maybe protect people in our community and fight differently. I don't know today whether there are any raids being conducted or not. I don't think you do either. It's sort of the coconut wireless of rumor is all we hear. But I don't think someone could be taken off the street in LA without LAPD and a mayor's office knowing about it. I don't think, body snatchers don't happen without witnesses, without law enforcement knowing about it, local law enforcement. So the first place I'd start as mayor is to let people in our community know what's happening every day. Let's start with information, good information. And let's make sure that we are engaged in that fight to protect people in our community. Now, widen it a little bit and say we have to work with the federal government. The federal government provides money for housing for homelessness. They provide money for the Olympics. They provide money for infrastructure and all of the things that we need to have happen in Los Angeles. So maybe there's an element of Daniel Lurie, which is, okay, we're going to have to work with the federal government. Maybe there's a little bit of Brandon Johnson in Chicago, which is, hell no, not on my watch. And maybe there's a little more clarity as to what's going on so we can create a different narrative about why snatching a firefighter from Los Angeles who's lived here the bulk of his life as a partner in a family is just not something that's right. And so maybe it's all of the above. I don't think it's city hall press conferences. I don't think that helps anybody. Maybe gets one on TV, but that's not where the fight is. That's not where the front lines are, certainly. And that's also not where the Daniel Lurie approach is of, okay, what else can we find to work together on constructively?
The state legislature earlier this year passed a bill that's going to go into effect next year, and that makes it a crime for federal and other law enforcement officers to wear masks to cover their faces. I'm not sure how this is going to be enforced, but it seems like it's going to be up to local agencies to do that. Would you direct LAPD to arrest ICE officers if they saw them wearing masks and not identifying themselves?
If that's the law of the state, and that's intended to protect our communities, yes, that's what we're going to have to do. That's the state law. Um, what we talked earlier about SB 79. I've lived in California a long, long time now. I'm always interested to see just how many new laws are passed out of Sacramento. Um, at some point, I hope we have leadership who will lead with some common sense, because that's going to go a long way. So, yes, I'll enforce the law of the state. We will make sure that if ICE are in our community and it's against the law to be masked, that they can't wear masks. But I think there's more to be done in leadership, as I spoke earlier. It's figuring out how you shed light on something awful that's happening in our community and push back in narrative, push back against federal officials who don't realize the pain they're causing, and put that type of pressure on people in the federal government, the Trump administration. I think there are things we can do to make Los Angeles a city of the future, not a city of the past. Bullies come and pick on people who, or organizations or cities. We've made it too easy. When we have a homelessness challenge or challenge of people experiencing homelessness that federal judges say is awful and not getting better, it seems then we're inviting in others to do our business. If we do our own business better, I think we're going to give less opportunity for people like Donald Trump to come in and try to, frankly, make a mess.
Austin, you've been involved in a lot of efforts, things I probably don't even know about. Um, and I believe you also worked for the Clinton administration. And in the course of your various functions and roles, have you ever met President Trump? Do you have any connection to him or anyone in his cabinet who you know well enough to get on the phone and say, hey, call it off?
I don't have a personal relationship with President Trump. We don't travel in the same circles. I don't think we have too many values we hold in common.
He used to be a
Um,
Democrat, so
yeah,
or at least a Democrat
I'm
donor.
always careful of people who change labels like that. We just don't travel in the same circles, don't share the same values. Yes, I know people who are Republicans, and I know people who are Democrats. I'm proud of the work Vision Learn does. We're in blue states and red states. We're in blue cities and red cities. I've been to the same school district in Charleston, South Carolina, with Jim Clyburn and Tim Scott.
This is a charity you
Republican.
founded, correct?
This
Can
is
you just
this is an organization that provides free glasses to kids in low-income communities.
okay.
So yes, I can work across the aisle, and now that doesn't mean I won't stand and fight. When we were feeding people through schools during the pandemic, uh, I had 3 interactions with the federal government. Donald Trump went on national TV and suggested I should be fired, and I got all kinds of texts saying, go on CNN and call them out. I go, no, we're gonna do our work. We're gonna feed people. The
He wanted
Secretary
you
of
fired.
Agriculture,
Why? Why did he want you fired?
I don't know. You'd have to go back on CBS. It just,
Okay.
I it wasn't. I chose not to respond. I just thought
Okay.
we had a mission. We were on our mission. Then we had an exchange with the Agriculture Department where they were concerned that we were feeding children and adults and not asking IDs, and they informed me that that was unlawful. Making me subject to arrest. And my response was, well, just give me 30 minutes notice. And I think they misinterpreted that I was going to pack my bags and go do something different. But they said 30 minutes. And I said, yeah, I want to call CNN and I'm going to call my wife and kids. This is a righteous fight. We're not going to do something different. They went away. And then one last interaction when we were passing out the food. We were a big buyer from that farm to table thing when no bacon was being sold in grocery stores. So we bought it all and passed it out to families that way. And there was a suggestion made by the White House that we should acknowledge President Trump in passing out food. And I said, well, no, we're not. There's something called the Hatch Act, and we didn't do that. So we've had those interactions with the Trump administration, but I have relationships with people who are Republicans and Democrats, and we're going to find a way to work with the federal government for the benefit of people who live in Los Angeles.
Earlier this week, we talked about the expected election of Zohran Mamdani in New York City. He's a Democratic socialist, very progressive. And I wanted to ask you, what significance, if any, do you see in his election in New York City to the mayoral race in Los Angeles in 2026?
Yeah, you and I spoke about this earlier. I think there are two comments to make on that. First is, I think one needs to be careful about labeling people running for office and assuming that's their values. What is it you want to see happen with your work? I would argue that feeding people, children and adults, no questions asked in a pandemic is pretty progressive. I would argue making sure kids who need classes and don't have them, 200,000 children in Los Angeles, is pretty darn progressive. But let's dispense with that label because I think we need a heck of a lot more housing built in Los Angeles. Does that make me a conservative, friend of developers? Does that make me a progressive because we need density? So I think one has to be careful about bringing labels. When I see a race in Los Angeles, I'm sorry, New York, mostly being about change. And you have a candidate who is a bit of a green screen, has some ideas, but has made it very, very clear that New York needs to become more affordable. And that's the centerpiece of his campaign. Running against an incumbent who, for better or worse, owns the fact that it's not affordable. He's a long-time elected. He's been involved. And I think that the theory of change applies to Los Angeles. We have someone who is a creature of the system, has served in different offices, including as mayor. People looking for change, I don't think are going to look to Karen Bass to change. She's going to bring you what she's been bringing you for years. I think maybe I can convince voters in Los Angeles that if you're looking for change, join with me. We can get Los Angeles back on track. And maybe that's the similarity we can draw between New York and Los Angeles. I think that's a change election. And I think we're in a place in Los Angeles where voters are hungry for change, for the
Do you
better.
think any of the policies that he's put forth, fare free public transit, free childcare, rent freezes, are they good ideas for Los Angeles?
The first question you have to ask is, okay, how are you going to pay for it? It's an idea. So maybe I don't take it as literally. I don't live in New York. Public transit plays a much, much bigger role in New York than it does in Los Angeles. Someday, maybe we'll catch up. The cost of public transit matters. So is he saying it's going to be free? I haven't seen yet where the money's going to come from. Or is he saying, I hear you, it costs a lot. What we have to do is slow the rate of increase, try to reduce it if we can. The same conversation that I had just yesterday with voters in Los Angeles about utility bills and sewage bills and trash fees. Okay. Can't make it free, but we can work darn hard to make sure we make good choices and quit taking so much money out of your pocket.
Running a successful mayoral campaign in Los Angeles, at least in the past 20 years, um, candidates had to build a strong coalition. So who's on Team Austin?
I think people across Los Angeles, the same people who worked with us to make sure people didn't go hungry during a pandemic, the families who understand I care enough to do the work to make sure their kid has the glasses they need to succeed in school and life. The people I've worked with in the business community who understand how hard it is to employ people in Los Angeles, and we need to make that better. The people who express frustration about a city that's becoming less affordable, less safe, and a more difficult place to live, I think they're all part of Team Austin.
But in terms of organizations, do you have any that you've made alliances with?
Too much is made of that, frankly. If you're an incumbent, you're going to get an endorsement of all the names that you might recognize. You should, because we have a system that's built to protect the incumbency and the favor they want to curry with whoever has to sign a permit or permission slip from City Hall. But I think voters are past that. Again, look in New York. All of the establishment are with one candidate, at least the latest polls show, is not going to win. So I don't know that that's really a measure of how people think are the issues that they're struggling with. I'm the candidate who's going to address the issue of affordability. I think that's the coalition. I want to be endorsed by all those who think Los Angeles is too expensive and a too difficult place to live. That's my coalition.
The Trump administration has put a particular target on people of color in its anti-DEI policies. And I think for a lot of people, there's a visceral reaction when there's a challenge to a Black woman. And I wonder how you respond to that proactively, or how do you literally address it when people bring that up to you? Because I'm sure it will come up.
Sure. As I've said, I like Karen Bass. I've known her a long time. I've supported her through much of her career in different offices. What we're talking about is a shared view that we need better in Los Angeles. I think she and I would share that. This isn't about race. It's about, if we have a shared view, how are we going to make Los Angeles more affordable, safer, an easier place to live? And I think she'd agree that's what this race should be about.
Well, that does it for this week's episode of the Golden State Report podcast. Thanks to Austin Beutner for joining us, and thank you for stopping by. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to hit like and subscribe below. And remember to check back next week for another episode of the Golden State Report podcast. See you later.